sec. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, the #1 game development podcast about game development and the lifestyle thereof. I am your host, Brandon Pham, and with me this week, a special guest, Derrick Fields. How you doing, Derrick?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. I see you. That is a good start so far. This is a part of the podcast where I actually ask you yourself about yourself, where you've been, where you at, where you heading. Just a little introduction to our listeners and audience out there.
Certainly. Should I begin with any one of those questions? I'm happy to dive in.
Yeah, just talk about anything. Where you're at right now. A little history about your game development career.
Certainly. So based in Chicago, Illinois. I've been here. It's going on something of 10 years now. Originally from Ohio, and bounced around a couple of states there. But what got me into the games industry, my story is I graduated with a background in 3D modeling and animation. Could not find a job for the life of me within the space, and decided I'm just going to start making games. And so that it began the development of the studio and the game that we're here releasing soon.
Okay. And for those out there that haven't read the title, what game is that?
That is Onsen Master. And then the studio is Waking Oni Games.
Sweet. I came across, through email and just looking at everything. I think there's always at least on the Western side, a fascination with Japanese culture in general, right? With anime, especially. Onsen, I'm guessing you've had plenty of experiences with it over there.
I did, yeah.
Were you in Japan for a while?
Yeah. So I funny background story. I used to work for a cosplay wig company and would bounce around domestically to different anime conventions, selling anime wigs. And so that had also landed me in Japan a couple of times, for both work and entertainment. So I've had the pleasure of getting there a number of times, and each of those was an opportunity to visit some onsen. One special trip was a visit to Kinosaki Onsen, which is just a hot spring town essentially, and there's an onsen across the street from another one, and you can stay at a ryokan, a certain type of hotel experience, and be able to hop in and out of them, at your leisure, which was pretty incredible.
Hmm. Your pronunciation sounds like you speak Japanese. Yeah.
That's pretty astute. Yeah. So hi. Yeah. Choto nihongo benkyou shimashita. I studied a little bit of Japanese. Demo benkyou shite imasu. I'm still studying. It's not quite there yet. There's a part where some of my vocabulary will go well for pronunciation, and then I just hit a wall on some of the vocabulary. Tango, takusan tango wasuremashita. I forgot a lot of vocabulary. So that's where I'll hit.
That's pretty solid, man. Like my wife's Japanese. I personally am Vietnamese. Our kids are half, obviously, but way better than anything I can say or do. I'm around it, so I can tell at least the pronunciation is correct, because even with me, how I say it's super American onsen, right? But that's awesome, dude. Have you always had a fascination with Japanese culture, growing up?
Yeah, I did. And along with games, my relationship to Japanese culture is hand in hand with being a Black American. And so with Waking Oni, and kind of weirdly a meeting that I was just having this morning, coincidence, but growing up as a black individual and being born in the 80s, raised in the 90s, Toonami is an experience for a lot of kids. And specifically being a black individual in this country, that experience with anime is a little bit different, where I was watching shows like Dragon Ball Z and then relating to certain characters, and then finding that this sort of individualized experience was shared with other black individuals, who were similar in age. And so now I'm growing up and having conversations with folks who, say, for example, also coded certain characters within anime series like Piccolo from Dragon Ball as being a black person because they represented certain, qualities or characteristics within our culture. And so when it comes to creating games and when it comes to building a studio, like Waking Oni, it's specifically to carry that conversation even further and not just build games that yes have an inspiration from Japan, but also specifically talk about this sort of cultural exchange between Black and Japanese culture, because among some of those shows that I grew up with, there's blackness throughout it. We talk about Cowboy Bebop and its musicality. We talk about musicality within, very obviously Samurai Champloo or Afro Samurai, and how blackness and black culture finds itself within these media, and how can I then create media that is doing the inverse, kind of sharing this cultural exchange back, and so by that it's to create games that prioritize Black individuals within anime inspired media. And so that's what leads me to create the games that we're working on now.
Yeah, it's definitely something. Well, obviously, growing up around Asian culture, like I noticed Black culture were in tune as well with Japanese, but also I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan, and a lot of Black culture are in love with Bruce Lee as
Yeah.
well. And it just seems like what is the attraction you feel, like the mutual respect here that seems to kind of like there's like a natural bridge between these two groups.
Right. And so obviously I can't speak for, an entire race. I can only speak from my own personal experiences. But, some of these experiences are, of course, shared. And to your point about Bruce Lee, there is this really excellent documentary called Iron Fists and Kung Fu Kicks. And it talks about the impact of Kung Fu films, of martial arts films in the Bronx specifically. And when, this sort of boom of those films came about, a lot of the people who were interviewed during that documentary, this created inspirations for Wu-Tang Clan. This created inspirations for blaxploitation, fighting films and things like that, where oftentimes you have a story about a hero who is going against oppression. And during the civil rights movement, oppression is the top of the list for Black individuals, and remains to be top of the list for some of us, all of us within this country today. And so I would think, at least in my experience, being an individual and growing up with shonen shows and watching shows like Dragon Ball Z, and then now today, sharing shows with my stepson like My Hero Academia, Naruto, and all these other things, you still have this story about an individual who has either equity or resources or power stacked against them, and then they still manage to find ways to overcome that. I think that resonates with a lot of people, but I think it especially resonates with the Black experience, and why shonen shows remain so impactful for the Black community. The reason I mentioned this documentary is because I kind of look at anime as like the contemporary conversation that was being had for the impact that Kung Fu films had, back when they first showed up.
Yeah, I definitely can resonate with that. My favorite type of anime have always been the kind of underdog through each episode gaining abilities.
Yeah.
Everyone didn't really believe in them, and then ending up as a hero. I mean, that's the trope for most anime. But even in
Yeah.
Westerns movies, like people, I'm a sucker for like romantic comedies. Titanic, right?
Yes.
It's the same kind of hero story. You didn't really think much of this guy, and then he kind of ends up being like the main character of the story. It's a very familiar thing that I think most people like, but for me especially, because of anime, a lot of Bruce Lee films, of all the stories and all the great entertainment that is out there. I'm always find myself attracted to that type of story in
Hmm.
particular. Um, so let's talk about Onsen, man.
Yeah.
What was your was it a culture shock going over there? Because Onsen, like public nudity, is not like a very comfortable thing. Like the first time I did it, I only did it once. I was with my father-in-law, and it's
Uh,
the first time I ever seen, anyone really naked next to me, except for the
yeah.
locker room over here in the States. But there
Yeah.
we are. We're just like people were going there super casual because it's like a family event almost. Like best friends would go in together,
Yeah.
and no one's shy about it. If anything, I was the shyest one. But it's a regular thing over there. So, what
Right.
was your experience like? Like going to Japan, but also the onsen experience.
Yeah. You know, I pun not intended, but I dove right in. With with um feeling comfortable in an environment like Onsen. It was my first time, similar to what you had mentioned, outside of a locker room experience, first time just being, publicly exposed to other people who are sharing that space with you. And so, I respectfully kind of observed what the pattern, the movement,
Yeah.
the etiquette was within the environment, and kind of did my best to just mimic that, so as to not so weirdly be already a tourist, but
Yeah.
really like highlight or spotlight that. I went with a close friend of mine and coworker at the time. He also is the co-designer of Onsen Master, and that was it. I think it was more awkward for him than it was for me, where I was
Hmm.
loving the space, the environment, and pleasantly boiling. The As far as the rest of Japan, it was also I don't know, it was kind of a very liberating experience. It was in a way, it felt like I could breathe a lot more with
Hmm.
when in the country. There's kind of an overwhelming sense of peace that I had while getting an opportunity to go to places like Miyajima or Mount Fushimi Inari, and doing those types of things. There's a sense of peace when getting to travel, outside of where you live, I would imagine, for any person. Um, but some of the places that we trekked to, I think, felt really special for me, especially being able to carry this relationship, that I had kind of grown with in regards to Japan, and then kind of cement that in reality.
Hmm. Well, you seem like a pretty tall guy. I can't tell for the webcam. I mean, obviously you stuck out in every way, and being over there, even I
Yeah.
stuck out because you know, uh, Japan. There's not a lot of weight rooms, right? So like,
Right.
it's a lot of skinny Asians, if anything, and so like anything outside of that seems to be sticking out, right? So,
Yeah.
but like everyone's super accommodating, and I think you described it best, super liberating, especially in onsen. There is something weird about clothing. I think we all like clothes. We all like to decorate ourselves in whatever and express ourselves in
Yeah.
different ways. But it was like very liberating to just like, here I am.
Right.
This is as I am. And it was
We're
kind
in
of
this
cool to,
together.
yeah, interact, and nobody was laughing or snickering or anything. It was very
Yeah.
normal. And it was weird. Uh, if you're weird, then you're not normal. It was kind of
Uh-huh.
feeling, and it was an all day event. Like I thought it was like an hour, but we were there with my family for like 8 hours. We ate. We took a break. We had a
Yeah.
lunch break. Had soba and everything. It was
Yeah.
I was melting on the floor by the end of it. It was a crazy
Equally.
experience. But what other things like stuck out about Japanese culture? Because you know, um, I always see them as like a meter for us, 10 years ahead um, of where we would be. Right? There's a
Hmm.
lot of things that's happening over there that we heard before that's happening now. Right? First cell phones over there. When I was hearing that, oh, they don't have landlines. Everyone just have their own cell phones. When we were in the '90s, like, oh, that's crazy. No one has a
Yeah.
landline, but now it's like happening in the States. No one really has, a home phone or anything. Were you able to observe stuff like that, to kind of help with your idea of that culture and, as you're kind of developing this game too?
You mean so as far as like maybe tech or just contemporary lifestyle that potentially stood out to me, or anything within Japan, the day to day that was like maybe an indication of things, tech or things to come in the States. Was I understanding that question correctly?
Yeah, yeah. Just anything that stuck out to you is like, oh, this could be either a warning sign of things to come in the States, because it
Yeah.
seems like you kind of share time here and there, and dedicating whole game towards that culture. Like,
Yeah.
what did you spotlight here that's going on, especially post pandemic too, right?
Yeah. I think during my trip there, probably one of the most salient things that stuck with me was the juxtaposition of very for Japan, very timeless things, things like temple or like torii gates, or shrines, and all of these things you would find right next to um, a new building that's being thrown up. Or maybe there's a temple like in Kyoto, for example. There's that temple that's, I believe, fairly close to the Kyoto station, that's kind of just right in the middle of all these other buildings and stonework that's going on around it. And the efforts that are made to make sure that those things are kept around, I think, are really important. Um, Coming from Chicago, Chicago experiences a lot of gentrification and pushing out of its neighborhoods, which displaces a lot of the Black and brown community in some of those neighborhoods, surrounding the city, as change comes around. And so it was observing that, and observing the change and the shift of very traditional or Chicago-like buildings now being traded for these kind of like Lego block condominiums or condo buildings that you now see in a lot of areas that even in the 5 or 6 years that we've been in the neighborhood that we're in, you did not see those before.
Mm.
So I thought about that a lot. I thought about the how aesthetic can be juxtaposed in certain ways in Japan. How you'll be taking a Shinkansen and you'll go from something like a city to somewhere else that is much more rural, and watching these things happen so quickly on a Shinkansen. Um, this doesn't inform me if Japan is at all facing the same sorts of um, just or not juxtaposition, but gentrifications or battle with modernity and changes within its environment. I don't know that information, but at least to me, with the temples that were there, the shrines that you would see in places like Kyoto and Tokyo, it conveyed a sense of care, or at least a deliberate placement of certain agricultural changes within the city, while choosing to maintain important monuments like shrines and things like that. Um, I would love for that same level of preservation to be carried in certain cities. Um, like Chicago, we have like old theaters and things like that.
Mhm.
Not all of those old theaters are going to have the same level of like, no, we need to keep this, or no, let's like at least try to preserve some version of its facade while modernizing it in some kind of way. So yeah, that was the main one that stuck out to me, and I kind of brought back, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the preservation of history and holding on tradition is definitely something. Like, even they're struggling, but at least they're making an effort to kind of hold on to those things, the older culture, because the
Mhm.
younger generation over there, from what I'm hearing, are starting to not. They're separating from that
Mhm.
mindset, right? It's not being passed on as much, but because I think overall the country is so clean, right?
Mhm.
Uh, that's the one thing I noticed just stepping out of the airport. It's like everything's
Yeah.
so clean. There's like 10 recycle bins, and one is designated to a very
Yep.
specific thing everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And they're all
And
about, presence and cleanliness. Yeah.
Yeah, coming from Chicago trains, because I can
Right.
take the CTA straight into the airport,
Yeah.
and so it can have a commute that is wildly different.
Yeah.
The CTA here will occasionally smell like pee,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's like
The hint of
go,
urine. Yeah. Public
yeah,
transit.
so to do that and then arrive and take the Yamanote line or something like that was pretty great. And to your point, with trash and making sure that cleanliness is maintained. Something that stuck out to me was near the vending machines are probably the only times that you would see a trash can. It's usually attached to the vending machine,
Yeah.
but there wasn't any other public trash anywhere else because it was just implied like, hey, take that with you.
Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, those little differences and the attention to detail, kind of like what you were saying, even if the old culture is trying to hold on to it, um, just anybody that is at least holding on to is good, because that carries on. Because if you can take a public
Mhm.
transportation, which their system is freaking awesome, you can go
Yeah.
anywhere and basically be able to take your whole family and not worry about smelling urine all day. Because I worked in LA, I worked in San Francisco. I took public transportation to work for commute all the time, and it is an experience every time, is the best way I can
Yep.
put it, right? And so to go to Japan, and I think of maybe a few other countries are like this too, where their public transportation is, they see it as a foundation of how their society functions, and
Mm.
actually upholds that for cleanliness and safety or whatever. It just, I don't know. It does elevate your day, elevate the individual, and therefore hopefully the society functions a little better. Just little stuff
Mm.
like that happens every day, I think does amount to something better, right? At least as a tourist, that was nice. it
Yeah.
was it was like, oh, it's an
Agreed.
actual vacation, cool. um but yeah, I would love to kind of dive into the actual game now, Onsen Master, right?
Let's do it.
So what's the best way to describe it, right? I mean, you could have used any other setting for this type of management type of game, right? But onsen in particular, what stuck out to you about the onsen out of all the other choices?
Yeah. So Own Semester is quickly described as a hot spring strategy game about healing. And the reason that in Onsen was selected, for the story, both comes from a deep love and admiration for the Ghibli film Spirited Away, but also
Nice.
the properties or idea of healing and restorement that is associated with being in an onsen. And so, yeah, you're right. As far as like a setting goes, it could have been a restaurant, it could have been Greek baths, it could have been all of these things. But that intersection of Spirited Away and Hot Spring is probably where it becomes most obvious.
Mhm. So, like, when you first kind of, this is my favorite question, when as you're planning it and you were kind of getting your budget together or whatever, like, how long did you originally plan that the game would ship to the reality of when it did ship?
Yeah, this is, you know, um, games. Any game being created is a miracle.
Yeah.
That was said to me by another friend and colleague, and that remains absolutely true. Own Semester had a moderate, or I should say, a modest success on Kickstarter. We raised a really small budget, which allowed us to polish off our prototype and acquire our publisher, Whitethorn Games. And so working with them has allowed us to, bring on a contract team and help, push this game across the finish line. Even with all that considered, we were all working part-time and, are maintaining other lives outside of creating games.
Mm.
And so with that considered and with, the changes that happen within our life, I now have a 7-month old and
Yeah.
and a 14-year-old stepson.
Hmm.
You might have heard the 7-month old's contributions a moment ago,
Hmm.
but that it kept the game in development for it was like 5 or 6 years.
Hmm.
And if if Onsen was able to receive the funding that that we are now capable of being able to pitch for and leverage resources to, a game like that should only take like 2 years to make 2.5 years, ideally.
Well, with COVID too, right? I mean, I bet that.
Yeah, that too. Wow. And that's a whole time warp. I completely forgot about,
Yeah.
the gap of that impact. And that had a huge impact on both, our team and the publisher too. Everybody got struck by that one.
Yeah. I mean, like with indie developers, I mean, when I talk to you guys, you guys are kind of used to working remote, so the impact isn't as crazy as like these bigger developers that are used to going to the office and not liking the office. And I honestly say like indie developers are actually more disciplined because they've been trained to kind of
Mhm.
operate on this type of schedule. And if anything, I'm still rooting and putting my bets on you guys kind of coming out of it okay,
Yeah.
uh, because of that very same reason. Uh, these, I don't know if you are talking to your colleagues about the kind of like a little fallout that's happening right now, but like bigger companies are really struggling, just trying to
Uh-huh.
figure this out still. And if anything, they're trying to get everyone back in, but
Yeah.
it's by it sounds like most of what you're going through is like life events, right? And
Right.
the development of a game is hard itself, right? I mean, you're just figuring out everything, especially if you're a small team. But the unpredictable nature of life does hit us in funny ways, and in very few, it's an accomplishment, like you said, it's a miracle just to finish making the game. I'm sure there were high and low points during this whole
Mhm.
development, right? Some pauses and unpausing. What was your best advice to yourself to kind of keep things going? Is it daily habits or just measures you put in place in case emergencies like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. It there I guess it's best characterized in two different ways. One component was really 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 wanting, and I still want this, there to be more games that just represent the diverse audience
Mm-hmm.
that play them, plain out. And that oftentimes kind of and I can kind of maybe exemplify it by a small you know not story, but sort of characterize it in a way. But that has always brought, that motivation comes together every single time I see another game release, or a myriad of games being shared through a large event. And then just still, not only wanting to see myself, but just to see a broader range of protagonists and hair textures and characters to be able to select from. When I don't see those things represented, I would say my motivator then just becomes vengeance. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if this isn't going to be done, then I need to do it. And so, um, oftentimes I will tell people my main fuel is revenge, and whether that's against people who don't know that that I'm vengeful for creating games um, that better represent our community or not, then I'm still out here kind of doing it anyway. So that's really like, honestly, that's what keeps me going
Yeah.
is and it fuels me to the next idea where I'm like, damn, we still don't have a game that looks like this. So let's put it together. Yeah.
It's so true. I was talking to my friend Ray, and he was just on this last episode actually, and he was complaining about how whenever he makes his own avatar, there's very little options for black people, and he
Yeah.
was complaining there's only one hairstyle all the time. And it was
Always. It's
always
like
one hairstyle. I was like, I swear that's a
shaved
meme.
fro cornrows. Like,
As a joke, I was like, what else is there, Ray? It's like, shut up, man. So it's true. I mean, it's you know, I get the benefit because there's a whole Japanese culture of games of Asian characters, sure, but
yeah.
like in Western games, it's just not, right. There's never an Asian lead character. You mean the last one
Yeah.
remember Sleeping Dogs? You know, it was kind of like a John Woo type of
Hmm.
open world game. It's obviously, you know, the Asians are having a better time than you guys, but like the Ghost of Tsushima was made by Sucker Punch, I think,
That's right.
right? And that got some backlash uh, for whatever reason. Um, I mean, what are your thoughts about that? I think like they did a pretty damn good. It's a weird, iffy type of thing. It's like it's a Western developer making a samurai game,
Yeah.
and it's a damn good samurai game. And some Japanese developers actually gave them credits. Like they made a better samurai game than some of our developers.
Yeah.
Um, so when you see like things like that, maybe they had great consultants and everything. Like it is kind of like a, a a line there where I think
Right.
it's okay, but some
Absolutely.
people I can see why people can be offended by that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I often think of it like a balance. We're constantly, being, um, we're constantly consuming media that is going to inspire us,
Yeah.
and it's always coming from different cultures, from different settings, whether based in reality or fantasy, etc. And then when that media hits us, we immediately want to, or not immediately, but some of us want to take part in that, to
Hmm.
be able to contribute to it in some kind of way, to say, I love this so much, this is just my letter to that. I understand that. And but I also think that there's a balance or a way to do that that feels meaningful, a way that doesn't feel like it's taking away from the content that you care deeply about. And where that territory starts to look gray, or not have really one answer for, I think comes or starts to become a little bit more indicative by the amount of work or research that went into a
Yeah.
certain game. A game like Ghost of Tsushima, like Sucker Punch put the work in.
Yeah.
There's no denying like this admiration for Akira Kurosawa films, and the extent that went into that, as well as just the gameplay and the story that's placed in there. It has really great narrative gameplay. It is absolutely a great game.
Hmm.
Um, when we are there's certainly nuance to be able to critique certain historical accuracies, or misrepresentations. And I think those types of things happen when, or let me back up and say, those types of risks are increased when you are a studio that is not of that culture.
Hmm.
And yes, they did consult with Japanese developers, and uh, I don't know what extent as far as like history, but I know its story does have some sort of historical significance. Um, and I don't think a game like Ghost of Tsushima, if that were in anybody's hands, Japanese, um, the background of developers that is at Sucker Punch or Space, that we are always going to land the mark 100% perfectly.
Yeah.
Japanese creators also brought, or Team Ninja specifically created
Hmm.
Neo, and the representations of William and other characters like Yasuke, and just the Dutch story that is presented with its initial telling of that is, it. I mean, obviously that game's like very high fantasy, and so the story of that is stretched to its benefit.
Hmm.
But I think any studio is going to not hit the mark 100% accurately, unless you are endeavoring to make a historically accurate game.
Yeah. 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 Like, I mean, just look at all the Final Fantasy movies. I mean, games.
Yeah.
Uh, my friend Larry always had the problem with the black character in that one. Uh, which
Final
one?
Fantasy 7.
Final Fantasy Seven. Yeah. The
Yeah.
what's his name again? I forgot.
Barrett.
Barrett. Yeah. Barrett. Barrett
Yeah.
is kind of like the one in Naruto, right? It's just like this. They definitely have a prototype for when using black characters in anime and games.
Yeah.
It's gotten better, but like it's still kind of like the same issue.
And
But
you think of Barrett and the influence of American media in
yeah,
Japan, and
that's where they're
obviously,
getting it from, right? Yeah,
yeah, that was the A team. Somebody saw
yeah,
Mr. T, and
yeah. I was like,
that's
that's how it
clear.
is. But
So it goes both ways. It goes everywhere.
hmm so with Onsen, with 5 year development, right? So with your ups and downs, and I'm guessing you had to learn a lot of roles on the job, right?
That's right.
Your background was in 3D,
Mhm.
and were you handling, or was your partner handling the game design? Like, what was the split work here? What were you mostly kind of hands on?
Yeah, originally it was just the three of us, and so it was me, the friend that I spoke of, Tim, and then eventually bringing on a programmer, Leo. And so the three of us put together, the first main stage that is the game, and the game mechanics that were most important to it. My role consisted of everything that wasn't programming, and so that was the character design, the 3D modeling, animation, game design. Tim was game design and producing, and so we balanced the many hats as best as we could. But yeah, that's kind of the division of labor. It was then after I'd mentioned Whitethorn, partnering with us for the remaining of the development, and that's where I got to take some of those hats, like animation, and be able to bring on another team member for that. The same goes for some of the roles like UI, UX, and
Mm-hmm.
so on.
Like the appetite for these type of games, I feel, have been increasing. People are just, they just want to have a good time. I think if anything, if you look at the summer festival of games where we kind of get the preview, what the next year or two are, it feels like it is returning to more simpler type of games,
Mm-hmm.
right? For a long time, I think a good stretch before the pandemic, and especially during the pandemic, there was a lot of live service type of games, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I saw was a lot of single player games, a lot of remakes, but a lot of single player games, singular campaign games. People just want to follow story, want to just do this thing without, getting too involved. Are you kind of seeing this pattern? I know that you made this game right before all this stuff was happening, making a
Yeah.
game truly to what you want to make and play. But were you able to kind of pick up on a lot of these things as the years went by? Did you change the original design based on kind of like where you saw the trends were, or did you add anything to it, just reflecting off of what the what everybody was doing?
The only thing that was added to the game that kind of reflected maybe the media of the time, came a little bit from Souls-like series, from Software's Dark Souls and
Mm-hmm.
Sekiro, and all these other titles. The way that is represented is it really just a small thing. So we have bosses in the game that will happen within the third set, or the third part of each stage that you visit. Um, and to borrow a little bit of inspiration, we just did a health bar that is very similar looking um, to a Dark Souls game. And by similar, I just mean it is at the center. It is very low and thin, and we have the boss's name, right above the health bar. But it is embedded into the story. I think in some of the later changes that happen within the art direction in the game, it's probably more represented
Mm-hmm.
in some of that stuff that you'll see. But yeah, that was honestly the only thing. I think when it comes to being an indie developer, as a space, there's always that sort of ability to be as a part of the movement, or not as avant-garde as you want to, and have that luxury, because there's going to be an audience that is interested in that sort of change up. And so with Onsen Master, we didn't do much else that represented any other movements. It was like, we like Overcooked, we like Diner Dash. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you love Nintendo. It definitely has the
Yeah.
Nintendo art style
Yeah.
down. Or those two games in particular. I feel like I didn't get. I noticed those games until like basically the Wii was coming out, right?
Hmm.
Where there was so much interaction going on with the unique control scheme that they got with the Wii
Yeah.
motion controls, um, and they were addicting as hell. I mean, were aside from those inspiration, were there other inspiration that you guys, you in particular, uh, was aspiring to?
Yeah, and that was to keep gameplay kind of easy to learn, moderately complex to master.
Mm-hmm.
I really valued you, and I'm glad you brought up Nintendo because I really value a lot of the games, like from Mario to, I don't know, Splatoon or something like that. All of them carry an aesthetic that's very family friendly, and then mechanics that are generally approachable. But if you really, really want to get good at the game, it takes a little bit more time or a concerted effort to understand them. That was kind of certainly an inspiration that we carried into Onsen, and think of those games like Mario and so on as very high achieving examples of how you can deliver gameplay to somebody.
Mm-hmm. Like the talking about landscape and changes, there's like three camps, right? Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Like
Yeah,
Sony and Microsoft is buying everybody, right?
yeah,
And we were talking about preserving history as much as we can. Like I'm so afraid that Nintendo's gonna be bought out by one of those guys.
right,
And at first they're gonna say there's no change, but with everything there's always change.
right.
Um, and Nintendo's very unique in their way that they're not really a competitor to those other two. They're kind of marching to their own tune. And I think with people like us who kind of grew up in the 80s, still have a lot of affinity with Nintendo.
Mm,
I mean, I do see like younger generation liking the Switch, um, because they're killing it with the Switch.
yeah.
But these type of games in particular, I do feel that our generation plays it more than, let's say, my 10-year-old.
Hmm.
And that's just maybe just a general, well, my very specific observation, right? Um, how are you feeling with like those type of gameplay experiences, when it turns like age group, right? Are you seeing like a shift here? You said you have, well, the one kid's too young. How old is your older one? Your stepson's
I
14.
he's yeah, he just turned 14. So and I've been with him since he was 6. So I to what you're talking about, I've seen, that sort of shift of gameplay experiences, that shift of exposure, kind of in that prime age of when they're, really starting to take in games and understand them, and develop an interest to, now, being a teenager and having very specific interests within certain genre.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to answer your question, one of the things that stood out to me were games like Minecraft and Roblox,
Yeah.
and later Fortnite became really highly valued around himself and his friends. And it was primarily because of the user generated content
Mm-hmm.
that was available in these games, but then also it was absolutely impacted and sort of thrusted into the focus because of the pandemic as well, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those games became environments that could become secondary for social gatherings and
Yes. Yes.
doing things specific with your friends. The When I ask him, and I'll poke his friend's brain all the time about the type of games that they care about, and they are the most popular, I would say, the more popular commercial games
Yeah.
that you would expect a young boy to play. And it's honestly very stereotyped,
Yeah.
even though I try to suggest, like, hey, what about this, like, cool single player game? And he'll say that something and said like, I'll watch you play, but I don't think I want to play it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yep.
um so I'll ask, like, okay, well, like, what are the games that you care about and why? And so he likes Fortnite, he likes Rainbow Six Siege, he likes Forza Motorsport, he likes all these other titles, and the why being because I get to play with my friends, and because they're building these fun experiences within Fortnite, or we'll try these goofy things that are specific to any of those games. I think the social relationship in games is probably the most prevalent thing that I notice in growing generations where, say for you and me, we grew up with single player games, and the connectivity didn't come around until like PlayStation
Yeah.
2.
And then
And,
you gotta
yeah,
pay for it. It's like
yeah. It
I
was like
had
Final
Net
Fantasy
Zero
11
for
and
free for
SOCOM.
yeah. It's like I gotta buy this thing, pay
Yeah. Oh, and
monthly. Yeah,
the network adapter, and
yeah, it was
so
complicated. Yeah,
yeah, it was lugging Xboxes and TVs to play Halo and all of that stuff. But I think where games are going, or I would say where games are at least thriving currently, still hovers around that social experience. And I think for generations that are upcoming, like your kid and mine, that will still be a valued part of the relationship in the games, or a value part in the relationship that they develop with games is, can I do this with my friends? Can I make my own stuff? Can I customize my character? That type of thing.
yeah. I mean, it obviously has a place. It's cool, right? To see how online social interaction is so easy now for basically every game that they want to play.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like probably you, I grew up with Onimusha. I grew up with
Yeah.
Spyro the Dragon. I grew up with Crash. I played everything, single
Mm-hmm.
player. Metal Gear Solid, Final
Yep.
Fantasies, all of them. There's like I don't know. It wires your brain differently than these first
Yep.
person shooters. Even with Roblox, if you're crafting something cool, it's kind of better. But like, being able to walk through a story and kind of be fed the same type of emotions your main character is being fed, how you supposed to be feeling at this moment as we're kind of unraveling this
Mm-hmm.
narrative, like that's a huge part of, I think, of at least creatively made us who we are, right? How we
Right.
want to construct an experience. And my kid's 11. He doesn't respect what I do, but he plays it all the time, right? He's like, yeah, you're
Yeah.
good, whatever, right? But if he wants to be a game developer, at least creatively, I don't think his brain is wired, maybe for better or for worse, the same way to be able to craft an experience in that way. And maybe that's why I'm surprised to see so much single player being announced over
Mm-hmm.
Summerfest, so many remakes, because I like preserving that part of the game industry. I feel is pretty important, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to wait till Netflix figure out this interactive thing that they're trying to do, right? Where it's not the same, dude. It's not like
Yeah.
clicking next, scenario. That's not the same.
Yeah.
Um, but just based on how everything's going, not even just the storytelling, like games like yours, I think it's so important. Because I grew up with strategy games too, like not XCOM, but I played Command and Conquered a lot,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
RTS, those type of games, and that is another type of experience. It's like chess, basically, right?
Yeah.
And no kids like that right now. It's like I,
It's
I
true.
I whipped out my PlayStation 1 because I kept all like this is they're in suitcases, right? But these are all the
Yeah.
games that made me who I am. And I showed it to him, and I even got like a legacy PlayStation 1 so that you can actually play it. No
Yeah.
interest. I was like, hey, you should
Yep.
play this game. This game like was a big part of my teenage years. It's like, oh, whatever. It's like Final Fantasy. It's
Yeah.
the best
I mean,
story ever. Yeah.
we want so badly to impart the experiences, because single player experiences for us, the shared experience was being able to tell the impact that the story had on you with
Yeah.
another friend. Final Fantasy 9, and then bumping into another kid who also had that boss battle experience. And so I tried the same thing. One of my favorite games is Tenchu on
Yeah.
PlayStation
Yeah. Oh,
2.
I love
My
Tenchu. Yep.
God, the game's incredible.
Yeah.
And I was wanting so badly to relay that sense of its gameplay to my stepkid, and it didn't resonate.
Mm.
It was the same thing. It was, no, I'll watch you play that, but I don't care. You asked a question that was like, I wonder if the types of games, or maybe these single player games are at all at risk by the type of media or gameplay experiences that younger audiences are preferential to.
Mm.
And I think the answer to that is no. I think both of those, that we're always going to have new kind of genre defining games, gameplay experiences, and spaces. But I think it just adds to the breadth of games and game experiences that people enjoy consuming, because we still see the emergence of new RTS games and then the community of individuals that enjoy them. And I think, in some kind of way, there's always going to be a group who does, passionately care about those genres, and there's always going to be groups who, care more about battle royales. I think what makes it maybe feel like, is will this at all be, kind of the end of the single player experience? It's just the genre is for like these types of user generated content, these conversations that hover around creating metaverse experiences within like Fortnite and things like that. It's just so salient. It's so salient and burgeoning that we hear about it everywhere, and we see other companies that have the resources to dive in and explore that very, very high right now. I think if we go back to, like before PUBG and all that stuff, like right now it's like what BR's Souls like,
Yeah.
and those are the genres that we think about.
Yeah.
But it was very different. It was very different 10 years ago, and it was very different before, battle royale games. I think another one that was MOBAs were
Yeah.
really salient, around when I was in university.
Mm-hmm.
So I think again, kind of circling back, I think it's going to present new stuff. I think there are a lot of studios that have the resources to be able to explore and then pour so much marketing into it that we see it all the time, and it creates like a perceived value around this is the game that everybody wants to play. But I think generations like your 10-year-old and my 14-year-old are going to they're going to take those experiences and they're going to redefine what type of games they want to play. Yeah, and they'll be the the next developers, and we'll see something totally different. It'll be a it might just be like, yeah, I was just about to say PlayStation Home just comes back and we're like, what are you doing? And like, I don't know, I'm just hanging out in my digital living room with my friends, and we are watching Netflix, and that's it. That might be what they care about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm just waiting. There probably is a meme video out there comparing PlayStation Home to, I guess, Horizon, right?
Yeah.
And, Sony, like, probably hurt, crying over the fact that it looks worse. Like, I try, it's like Meta, like, they're trying to be Nintendo, but not really. You know what I mean? Like, they're going with the stylized, which is a smart decision, but it's like, this is made by corporate overlords, man. This type of game, it's like, whenever I tease this a lot, we have these roundtable, and when I talk to Ray, it just looks like, when you're watching a movie and suddenly a game is popping up in the background, the kid's playing it, and it's made by like non-developers, right? It just looks obviously bad.
Yeah.
And it just looks like that for Horizon. It's just people around in the table chatting it up. It's like, nobody wants to do this. It's not fun. It's the weirdest thing. It's a game console, but you're trying your best not to promote games, right? And so, I love the idea of metaverse. I like, probably you and many game developers or gamers look at Ready Player One, and we don't look at the Dysotopia or like Doomsday. We look like, oh, that's a cool game. I would love to be like, that's the message I got from that. I was like, I would love to be a part of this. So I think that's part of our future still, but I do feel like we're in a stumbling block because it's going to take a while to get there. And probably you're right. It will probably take this next generation to figure that out, because I feel like our generation isn't figuring that part out. We didn't grow up around where it's YouTube and social games where we're able to kind of reimagine it to make a metaverse work, because the efforts that I'm seeing right now, I feel like it's taking a step back. It's like, guys, it's an RPG, right? That's what the metaverse is.
Yeah.
We did WoW like 20 years ago. Like, why is this Why is this worse than
Yeah,
WoW?
we had WoW, we had Second Life, we had,
What's going on? This
these
is step.
conversations have
Yeah.
been here. Yeah.
So I do look at that, and I am worried. Like, what's going on here? It's just like we're aging out, I guess,
Yeah.
or something. Our developers are aging out, just not doing it.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah, if there's like a piece of advice that I would give to somebody is listen to the kids. They're going to indicate,
Yeah.
what the next market of entertainment will be, because they are taking in the things that have been created by us. And just like every other cycle of art movements to historical movements, they always end up being kind of an antithesis to its predecessor, something that took that experience and said, well, now I want to become this out of it, and becomes the answer to it. And that's how we kind of iterate forward on art, on technology, on a lot of things. And so, yeah, no, it's not up to people older than me to decide what the metaverse is going to be. They're going to keep trying these things, and they're going to throw these darts at the dartboard, and the one that lands is the one that the kids go, give me that one.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, nah, I'll just work on it.
Yeah,
And they're gonna
exactly.
fix
Just
it.
move over, old man.
Yeah, it's so yeah, we'll see it happen, and it'll come, and it'll hit us the way that um you know the way that Fortnite hit the gamers that
Yeah.
are younger than me. We didn't know that was going to be what everybody wanted to play.
Yeah.
Epic didn't know that.
Well, I mean, they saw it in PUBG. They knew something.
Yeah. Right. So I'm not saying that they're just operating with zero market research, but it was to see it represented the way that it is now.
Yeah.
And
They
and that.
definitely stepped up. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
I will say that. Yeah, it's gonna be the darkest mark in history. Like nobody's talking about it. But I'll say it over and over again. I mean, that story, how they kind of ripped off PUBG blatantly,
Yep. Yeah.
um, is the best bet they've made.
Yeah.
Risk assessment that they ever had for like,
Yep.
oh, they might sue us, but it's okay. We'll make multiple billions of dollars. And I was like, oh, okay,
Right. And
but no
then
one
and
talks
then
about it.
took
Yeah,
and then they took social media. We had this movement of like, okay, so we ripped off social media. Like, they're in the room, and they said, what else do the kids like? And they're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
give
yeah.
them the Instagram, or give them the TikTok dance moves. and
Yeah,
and
that's
so we saw the emotes, or not emotes, but we saw the dance moves, show up in Fortnite, and people
and
are
all
like,
these
now hold
dancers
on.
are mad. It's like I think
Not
it
giving
feel like
credit and all
finally they
that.
cooled off. It's like, all right, maybe we shouldn't just keep copying what's hot right now because people are catching on that we keep
Yeah.
we're like Facebook. We're buying things or just taking things from the smaller developers now.
Yep.
But all right, man. Well, I mean, we're actually at the hour mark. I'm super happy to talk to you, man. It was great kind of hearing your experience. Onsen Master, tell the good people out there, this is the part where I shut up. Tell the good people out there how to find it, how to get it right now.
Yeah. So Onsen Master is coming to PC and console. You can wishlist it on Steam right now. And if you want to follow more about the game and things to follow, I would recommend going to Waking Oni Games. That's the @handle for Twitter.
All right. Perfect, dude, man. It's you're a pro. It was a pleasure to have you on. Maybe one day we'll go Onsen together. Maybe that's too forward. I don't know how they
Yeah.
do it over
No,
there.
please, let's. Yes.
All right.
Ikimashou. That would be great.
All right, there we go. All right, let's put that date on the board. As always, guys, it was great. Thank you for everyone that is listening. As always, all the information will be in the description links below. And have a good one.